questions that that we can't answer at the time. So if you could let me know if you'd rather not have it recorded, then that would be great. Otherwise, I'll make a start. Okay, so as I said, this is the second workshop. We are hoping to have another workshop perhaps next Friday. We'll confirm the date shortly, but that will look at research methodologies and decolonisation. So just look out for announcements on our Twitter feed and on our website. So today I'm just going to take you through some of the processes around the call itself. Once we receive the proposals and the assessment, and then our finance and due diligence processes. So these are the main headings of things that I'll be going through. Please let me know if you can't see the presentation or if you have any other technical issues. So as we mentioned on Tuesday, we have just launched the call for funding. And we're part of we're a Network Plus project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council here in England. And the format of our grant is a Network Plus grant, which means that we then are required to commission funding projects that meet our wider project's specifications and aims and objectives. And we've decided to launch 3 levels of funding. So we have researcher grants of up to £5,000 for UK-based individuals only. And if you're interested in applying for that, please get in touch with us as soon as possible, and then we can talk about what UK-based actually means. Small grants of between 10 and 30,000, and then large grants of 30 to 60,000. All of the awards must end by the 31st of March next year. And because of the various issues that have affected the project, COVID being the biggest one, and subsequent cuts to the foreign aid budget, the projects will only be able to be between 3 and 6 months duration. Obviously, if we can get things moving quicker once we award projects, then you may be slightly longer, but they do need to be finished by the end of March next year. The key dates for the actual call itself, for the closing dates on the 29th of April. We are hoping to have the panel meeting in early May, so the second week of May. And then the decisions will be well within the 2 months, but I mean, we're putting 2 months to give ourselves some wiggle room. And then in terms of the process itself, all of this is on our website, but just to reiterate, for individual researchers awards, these are the things that you need to submit. So the application form is the same for all of the awards. Letters of support is the same across all of the awards. And then for individuals, a CV and any visual evidence you have, because this is an arts and humanities based project. It would be great if we could see examples of things you've done in the past. And then for both the small and large awards, the items that you're required to submit are the same. So the application form, and then we have an Excel budget sheet as well, which is more extensive than the one that's in the application form. That's just a summary, and then we require a kind of individualized, itemized budget for the larger awards, letters of support, and then we also have the due diligence form and copies of the lead organisation's audited accounts, and again, any visual evidence of previous projects you've worked on that will support your application. And as I said, these are just things I've already talked about, but just to confirm, the small and large grants are open to UK and African scholars, NGOs and other organisations that work in relevant areas. But if you are an NGO, you need to be able to demonstrate research capacity, history of conducting research, or that you're partnering with an academic institution, for example. So we do have an individual researcher-led award on currently, which is a larger award, and that person then partners with an academic institute in Africa. The funding will be awarded using a slightly modified OU contract. And then, as with previous awards, we pay the awards in advance, but that's subject to due diligence checks. And it's paid in stages. So we pay the first payment in advance of the project starting, and then the next one, depending on how much funding each recipient has spent, then we adjust accordingly, but we usually pay that at the halfway point of the project. If you're looking at that and thinking I can't possibly provide some of this information, then please do email us. There are workarounds. It's just we need to know individual circumstances. We can't just say, oh, we can waive this. We need to know what individual circumstances there are. And because we're operating via a UK funding body, there are rules that we need to apply, which are the rules of the funding body. So if you're including UK partner costs, you need to, in your budget, include 100% of those costs, but we can only fund 80% of them. Whereas if your organisation is based in Africa or in one of the DAC list countries, then you're funded under what's called the exceptions budget line, which means you would receive 100% of what you've requested. And this is just a repetition of the last slide, but the only difference is the value of the grant. The large grants are between £30,000 and £60,000. Just to say, if you'd like to ask a question, we can leave questions to the end because it's quite difficult for me to see the chat. So please feel free to write them in the chat and then we can look at them afterwards. So again, this information is on our website, but it's worth kind of covering what activities does the grant cover. Again, it's something that you know, the funder is keen on. It has to be new activity. It can't be something that you're already doing, but it can be something that if by receiving this money that you can do something innovative with something you've already done, so you can improve on something and meet the aims of the aims and objectives of the wider DEPA project, and that's something we would consider. These are just some examples of things that the grant covers. There is a much more extensive list on our website. So we are an arts and humanities project, so it must include arts and humanities methodologies in your project. Community engagement, dissemination, so a large part of the wider project is the production of open educational resources, and so each project will be expected to contribute something to that so that we can use locally attuned educational materials. Long-lasting impact, that, you know, that's a lofty ambition for a project that's between 3 and 6 months, but as a collective, that's what we hope to achieve, whether it's leaving networks in place long after the project lifetime. But we'd like to see how you will contribute to those. And you can include conferences, workshops and seminars. An important thing to note is your projects must be ODA compliant. So the research that you're proposing must be relevant and contribute to the issues in developing countries. And again, on our website, there's a list of the sorts of things you might include, but equally in the application form, we ask everyone to include an ODA compliant statement. And then just some things that the grant doesn't cover. And again, this is on our website, but infrastructure and capital expenditure won't be funded. We don't ordinarily, and this again comes directly from the funder of the wider project. We don't fund purchases of equipment under £10,000, but if you can demonstrate, you know, if you have a project in a rural area and you need internet connectivity, then that's something we would absolutely recommend including, and we would fund. And then the budget justification. This is so as I said, in the application form, there's a very short table where you summarize your budget, but then you're also asked to justify some of your expense items, or all of your expense items, some in slightly more detail than others. So you have the form in the table in that form, but then you also have the Excel document. And if you've downloaded the Excel budget, I am going to update that slightly just to make it easier to complete, because at the moment I'm not sure it's the most simple thing to complete. So the small and large awards must complete that Excel document, and you must include line by line items. And I would recommend perhaps if you're part of a large organization, talking to your research office, but if you're not, talking to colleagues where you conduct research. And there are I think we've all done it where we've written research proposals, and then afterwards we think, oh, if only I'd included this and this. And for our projects, internet connectivity is one of the big ones, and it's something, you know, that often gets added in at the, you know, that you wish you'd included. So I'd recommend including that. In terms of the due diligence checks, you're asked to complete a form, and it's a form that we've adapted from UK research and innovation. And we're required to check every project for due diligence. And so that form is, you know, a version of the form we had to complete as a project, and we ask everyone to complete it. And the purpose is obviously to facilitate successful partnerships and to make sure that our funding is, you know, going to be used in the way that our wider project aims intend. And there are sections in there, so it does ask you for certain items, such as it does ask for your audited accounts, 3 years worth, but in some cases we accept that might not be possible. But if you please don't look at that and think, oh, that excludes me, because it certainly doesn't. There will be exceptions, and we appreciate that. And in the last funding call, we spent a very long time, sorting out an organisation that wasn't able to apply through that route, but we found a different route through which they could apply, which meant they didn't have to provide those accounts. But if your organisation is less than 3 years old, I think you're asked to provide your last audited accounts, for example. And the sorts of things that we will look at when we're looking at the due diligence form as your ability to deliver and your governance control mechanisms. So we do look at things like your safeguarding policies, your data management, your financial stability, and then also any plans you have to subcontract. So you can do that, but that's something you need to then include that in your budget statement and justify why you need to do that. Then turning to, once you've submitted your application form, we quickly assess them as a panel. So as I say, within 2 weeks, I think, of the closing date, we're aiming to have the panel meeting. And the panel is made up of members of the DEPA project team and also some members of our advisory board. So we and they're not really included within the project other than in an advisory capacity. And so we will advise you within 2 months. It will be before 2 months, I think, probably about a month. And then again, the assessment criteria are on our website, but obviously you have to fit with the overall strategy of the project. Included dissemination strategy, and also how you're going to target local communities and the quality of the arts-based research that you're proposing. And obviously, as I've mentioned before, you have to meet with the requirements of the GCRF and ODA compliance. And if you have any questions about those, please do let me know. This slide just shows you the process that each of the funding routes are assessed by. So for individual applicants, this is just for the individual researcher award. We have had people apply as individuals for the larger grants, but you would need to supply, for example, if you are applying through the larger grant or the small grant route, you would need to supply the same documents as if you were an organisation, just because of the size of the award. But if you're applying as an individual researcher, you will be assessed by a review panel, and your budget will be reviewed. If you're applying as an organisation, then we'd need to do those due diligence checks that I mentioned. Once we then establish that that's okay, we then have an OU due diligence check, which is similar. And then your proposal will be assessed in the same way. We may come back to you with questions, and it might be an iterative process. And then in terms of if you are successful, again, for individuals, it's slightly different. And this could be an individual who is applying for a large grant. You would sign a consultancy contract, but before that, we would need to go through the the OU's right to work checks. So this is why we say on the website UK individuals, but this is just to check that you do have the right to work in the UK and that you have a UK bank account. And once we've done that, we can do ordinarily pre-COVID, that would be an in-person activity, that right to work check, but I think we still are doing those in the same way we're doing this meeting, so online. You would then sign the contract, and then from there the process is the same for all of the projects we offer, and we would expect awarded projects to attend data management training, and we did offer other training as well, so just an introduction to the team and the project. For organisations, it's slightly more involved. We would then need your lead organisation's details. We would ask you to complete a new supplier form on the website. For the OU, you'd need to be set up as a supplier. And then the process is then the same. You sign the contract. You could, but if you then are subcontracting, that's up to you to have that relationship with your subcontractors or your partners. It's not the OU would have a relationship with one organisation, the lead organisation in the project. It's then, your arrangement should then be in place for any subcontracts or any partners you're working with. And the same, we would expect you and your researchers to attend a data management training session, just so that to ensure that we're GDPR compliant. And then the next one I've put, will your research involve human participants, but I'm pretty sure most of them will be, so I'm not sure why I put that in there. I think it look nice. So you would all require some kind of ethics submission. I guess if you're an individual researcher audit, you might not, you might be attending conferences or something like that. And this is the ethics submission sometimes is what trips some projects up, in terms of if you're not in a research organisation, you might not have a research ethics panel to then approach. And in those cases, we can negotiate, and we can do that through the OU. So we would assist you through that process. And then obviously we can't start the project until the ethics is in place. So it's quite important to think about that when you're writing your proposals as well, what sort of things you might want to include. And again, we can offer some advice because we've been through this, 5 or 6 times with our various projects. So we have, a few suggestions that we could share with you. And then this is my last slide, actually, so I'm perhaps talking a bit too fast. So once this slide mainly applies to organisations. So once you've signed your contract, these processes on the left of the slide I've just talked about already, but your contract would need to go between yours and our legal services for signature. And then you would, usually at the same time, you can submit an invoice, and I would provide instructions as to what that should include. And we ordinarily, if your grant's between, I think it's more than 3 months and up to 6 months, we transfer 50% of the funding up front. And then at the halfway point of the project, we would then ask you to submit another invoice. But at that stage, you would need to provide a report and an expenditure statement and proof of expenditure. In that expenditure statement, we do ask then for details of how you plan to spend the remaining funding. That it's not, we wouldn't necessarily transfer all of the funding at that stage. It would be a case of us having to review what you've spent and what your plans are. And we all know with research projects, it never ever goes to plan. So we might have to say, well, actually, you might say, well, in the country we're in, there are new COVID restrictions or something else has happened. So we need to change tack, and we would, it's a case by case basis. It's not a one size fits all process. And then at the end of the project, of your individual project, within 1 month, we would ask for a final report, a final expenditure statement, and that you provide us with the research data that we can place on our SharePoint site. And I think that might be the last one. So does anyone have, so I realise that's an awful lot of information that I've just thrown at everyone. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. And again, I'll record it so you can view it at your leisure. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Just so you can have a view of my face. This putting a face to the name, to the voice.
Hi.
Okay. Yeah, hi Joe. It's good to be here again. Thank you for all the information you pass across. Quite a lot. But just a few questions in terms of clarification. I was just thinking if maybe on the website, I could go check because I've been going to the website very often. I could go check some of these acronyms, the OU, ODA, CCROF. Okay, so I could go there and I get all the clarifications.
Yeah, so we've got links to our funders' requirements for ODA compliance and GCRF and things like that. And if you're happy to, I can send you those links because I think we'll have your email where you registered, so I can send you those as well.
Yes, I'll be glad. I'll be glad to have them.
Okay.
Then secondly, I just today I was going through it and I saw on the eligibility requirement for the small grant, because the individual research grant is actually for those based in the UK and I'm in Nigeria. So I think it's actually either the small grant or the large grant I could go for. Now, I was just thinking, since it has to be NGO or some kind of local community organization, so what I'm required to do, is it that I'm supposed to partner with an NGO or get an NGO on board or a local community, and then together, well, maybe I am the PI for the research, because what I also saw is that they also have to do this research aspect. So NGOs may not always have the capacity to do research. So the academic aspect provides that research, and then, but it has to be in collaboration with local communities or an NGO. So I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, it does make sense. So if I understand you, so would you be interested in applying as an individual then, and then partnering with other people? Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's what I intend to do.
Yeah. So,
but some of the documents, it looks like it has to come from an NGO. For instance, the 3 years auditing report.
The audited accounts.
Yes,
yeah.
So I wouldn't have that.
So in your case, it might be best if you do partner with an NGO or probably an NGO, and then they could be the lead organization. You could be the PI. And then you could get, if they don't have research capacity, then you could then partner with an academic partner as well. I know it sounds terribly confusing, but yeah, I think that's the best way around it.
Okay. So I'll keep talking as I try to fill the form and go through, because where I come from, I'm resident now in I don't know if you've heard of the University of Ibadan.
No, I haven't.
It's one of those. It was an extension of the University College London. University College London established a campus in Ibadan, another campus in somewhere else, in Kenya, in Ghana. So I work in the university. My area is philosophy. But I come from the Niger Delta. You must have heard of the Niger Delta crisis. Yeah, so I come from that region. And for some time, I've actually been doing some research around the challenges, the violence. But I just think the DEPA project gives me another angle to look at the whole experience. You know, we have always been talking about the violence, but how much has been done to educate the people, the local people, in terms of peace, in terms of approaching the whole experience from an angle of peace. So that's what I'm just thinking now. It would be a good way to look at that whole experience from. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Peter. That's really very, very interesting. And of course, Ibadan has got such an amazing history, and even sort of looking through Ibadan's own archives on values and knowledges of peace and its role in the kind of independence movements and the post-independence issues. You know, there's a lot of stuff which just Ibadan holds just as its own sort of as part of its repository. So it would be amazing to even look at those and to work on that, because I think there is something about institutional historical knowledges. And we've we had quite a really enjoyable time reading about Zaria, and that university and the kind of work that they did. It's just amazing. So there are some real pockets of fantastic decolonial thought, which needs to be re-excavated in especially in the Nigerian context. And so anything which even looks at those sorts of issues would be really very, and being able to pull that in and tie that in would be really good.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Very good.
Thanks very much, Peter, for joining us today. I think we have some other questions. Naluembe?
Hi, I'm just putting my camera on. Oh, it's not helpful. Oh, that's better. Okay, that's better. Hi. Actually, a friend of mine sent me the link to the project. I hadn't heard of it. And I've been working actually in Nigeria. I haven't met Peter. I work between Ibadan and
Wow.
And OAU. Yeah, hi Peter.
Oh, yeah, hi.
This is about.
I live close to the campus, the University of Ibadan campus.
Okay, but I'm back in London.
Oh, okay.
I'm back in London, and my project was looking at the intersection of photography and political imaginaries, like everyday popular photography, everyday people's photographs. And one of the things I did, and I was thinking, because I've been thinking a lot about the role of education and decolonization, but I work a lot with participatory methodologies as well. So that's why I'm interested in the project. But I have maybe a couple of questions. One is about if you partner with a university, do you still need to do they still need to provide 3-year audited accounts? How does that work? So that's one question. And also, do you think it would be too ambitious to do a project that was a comparison between, looked at both Nigeria and Uganda being where I'm from, and also, because I've worked a lot in the Great Lakes region, and then now in the last 5 years, I've been working in Nigeria, and I keep thinking that one could gain a lot taking a comparative dimension to more of the work we do. So yeah, so those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Shall I take the first one, Parvati, and then maybe the second? So in terms of the partnering with an university, I'm assuming there you mean that you would be the lead.
Yeah, I would be the lead, but it would be like a federal. It would be either Ibadan or Gazi, or it would be a federal university, not a private one.
Okay, so approach that we could take is that we would contract with you. Are you UK based and have a UK account?
Yeah. Based, yeah.
Okay, then the approach we've taken, obviously we can talk about this separately, but it's useful response for other people, I guess. An approach we've taken is we've consulted with a UK based individual, and then he is then our contract is with him. He then subcontracts with a university, so you wouldn't need to provide 3 years worth of accounts, but you're then, as the person contracted to us or with us, you are then responsible for the relationship between you and the university. So if you wanted to see their audited account, that's entirely up to you to, if you wanted to complete some due diligence checks, that would be up to you to do that. But our contract would be with you as an individual, not with any of your partners. So that's one way we can definitely do it, if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, I just wanted to think, I've only just started looking at your website, but then the question just popped into my head in terms of because I would either work with an NGO or it would be with a federal university.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Do you want to answer the second question, Parvati?
Yes, definitely. There is always scope for comparative work, though I think then you're looking for one of the larger grants, not the smaller ones. One sort of word of caution, if you like, we are trying to, we're trying to extend some of our geographical reach, and we already have projects in Nigeria and in Uganda. And I'm going to invite Craig in a minute to come and tell us a little bit more about the Ugandan project. So I guess what would be really interesting for us is, so we've got gaps. Yeah, we've got Northern Africa is a big gap for us. We've got other country gaps. We've got gaps in the sense that we would really like much more of a feminist perspective, projects led by women. We'd be quite interested in people like Peter, who could possibly add a lot of value with the historical and academic knowledge, philosophy, again, because ethics, we're interested in things like ethics. So, and we're in conversation with other people also who work in philosophy. So we definitely have gaps. Nigeria and Uganda are definitely not gaps. So that doesn't mean that that project will not get funded, but it just means that that's not kind of our top of our priority. So if you can, another thing that we're very interested in is the Pan-African perspective. So things that extend our reach into things like what the AU can do, or any other kind of Pan-African perspective would be, or even groups of NGOs rather than one NGO, would again be very, very, very useful for us. We've been trying to develop that Pan-African perspective, but it hasn't yet worked. Even if it's just like, ECOWAS or SADC countries, but ideally to have some kind of a networking. We also have some within the arts and humanities frame, we've got, things like photo voice and a little bit of theater. But what we don't have is people looking at things like broadcast, radio, the big broadcast. So if you know of artists who work with television, for instance, or who have that wide range, we're definitely interested in those kinds of things, which is going to, really increase our spread. We're interested in teaching methodologies which go into things like use of Raspberry Pi or other small technologies as ways of teaching. So we've got loads of obviously with a project like this, and with the complexities of the world, there's loads of things, and in particular, and also of different types of conflict. So we would be interested. We've got one project on climate, which is going to look in part on climate change, but we don't have a lot on some forms of conflict. Most of them are around political conflict. So again, that's a bit of a gap to look at other forms of conflict. So yeah, we'd really look forward to, and we'd encourage you to apply. And particularly from the Lake Chad region, we've got one project in Cameroon, but we don't have a lot more. So we would, Great Lakes region, or Greater Lakes region, I've forgotten which one you said. But we would love to, but yeah, you can see that we've got gaps, and we hope that you'll be able to hit some of those gaps in the calls.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very useful. Thank you.
Can I also ask Craig to step in and talk a little bit about the Uganda project, so that you can get a sense of what's happening there already, so you can position your project in relation to that? Craig?
Yeah, definitely, Parvati. Hi. Yeah, so I'm Craig Walker, and I'm a co-I on DEPA and working on the Uganda proof of concept. My colleague Taminki is also here working with me on Uganda, but she's also leading on the POC, or she's working on the POC in Nigeria as well. So interesting, you mentioned the photography work that you were doing, because we are using photo voice in Uganda, and we're building on a previous project which we did with Melise, and there the focus is on conflict and dynamics of peace and peace building between refugees and host communities. And so we're working specifically in Orichinga in the southwest, but we are also thinking of expanding a little bit into Kampala as well, for that kind of rural urban comparison. The framework that we're using is around the intersection of kind of citizenship identity, a sense of belonging, intersecting with justice and peace, the kind of broad conceptual framing we're looking at. And when it comes to kind of the decolonial agenda with the project, it is very much decolonizing ways of working and decolonizing methodologies. So we are trying to go to that kind of extreme end of the path experimentally, because we're working with a youth group who already know photo voice. So we're looking at how we can decolonize the methodologies. Bit of a snapshot there, so I hope that's helpful. Don't know whether Tommy wanted to add anything there or say anything about Nigeria as well, just because there are the interests with Nigeria as well. Taminki.
That would be great. Tommy, did you want to, so Tommy is leading on the project, which is also, so she's leading on, in part on the project in Nigeria and in Uganda, so would be a, ideal person. Sorry, I didn't realize Tommy was here, so otherwise I would have asked her as well. Great. Tommy, did you want to say a few words? And then I think we have a question on ethics that we should come back to.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to come on Zoom. My network's not that strong today. Yeah, afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so I think following from Craig, I think, yeah, we, as you mentioned, the work with refugees in Uganda, and here we're working with the IDP community here in Abuja, which is focusing on the oral histories of the elders that we've been working with now for over a year. And I think that links with some of the focus that Parvati mentioned. We've had some various build-up work to that, so to embed our kind of decolonial participatory action research approach within the IDP communities. So that links to having elders projects, health projects. So we're more kind of embedded in the work, but this in the communities where we work. But of course, that's not the case with this grant because it's a bit less time, but I think there's still potential to do that, to ensure that the community benefit from the research and the funds, because that's for me is the focus of what decoloniality could be and should be. So as Craig mentioned, in Uganda, we're working with refugees here. Obviously, it's IDPs, which I feel is just another name. They're still displaced. They're still out of their home environment, and actually, many IDPs have less access to resources and support than refugees in some other countries, especially here in Nigeria. So we're working with an elders community of over 26 elders, but we'll be working with them, and also in a minority language here in Nigeria, the Glavda language, which is a minority language from Nigeria and Cameroon. And our other aspect of the work is to also publish in Glavda, hopefully continue to work in Glavda, archiving Glavda, to ensure that languages like Glavda are maintained as well. And we have community researchers who speak and are from Borno, who are also displaced, so we've incorporated them into our project. And we're also then linking with theatre, community theatre, where we hope to then have forums where we could kind of tell the stories in different formats, music, theatre, that other people within the community and other stakeholders. We want this to link to policy as well, to make some changes for those who are most marginalised, like the elders within IDP communities, so they have their voice heard within Nigeria, where it's very much not. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks, Craig. So Shirley's question about the ethics submission. So I'll start, but I'd look to Parvati and Craig to chip in, because they've probably done more of these than me. So we are required at the Open University, and I think all UK research, and because our funding is UK based, all of our projects will be as well. We're required to get clearance for any research that involves human participants, to ensure that they're safeguarded and that their rights and welfare are protected. So the process we have at the OU is probably similar with other academic institutions, in that you have to submit a form that describes where your research is taking place, with what participants, how many, how old they are, what the research entails, whether you're, I'm not sure if I've got this bit right, but whether you'll be collecting any specific types of data. And then you kind of get into the realms of data management, so that's slightly different, but you would then have to submit things like consent forms. So you would need to demonstrate how you will gain consent from your participants for their involvement in your research. And those consent forms would need to demonstrate that participants are clear about their involvement, about what happens to any data that you collect. And also you need to demonstrate that you'll safeguard them and their well-being. So in one of our projects, we found that participants were traumatized by what we were, they were being asked to, not being asked to relive, but through their participation in the research, they were reliving traumatizing experiences. So it's just being aware that things like that could happen, and demonstrating that you have other strategies that you could take if those things happened. And then in terms of the actual process itself, there's a whole series of documents that we need to complete: the form, consent forms, something called a participant information sheet. So that explains to participants exactly what the research entails, what will happen to any information they provide. But obviously we are aware as a research project that in certain contexts this approach, the UK academic approach, doesn't necessarily work, and we've developed some interesting ways in the project of informing participants, so we have included those, and the methodologies we use don't lend themselves so easily to such processes. So if we're using arts and humanities methodologies, we might be recording people, and we have to be clear about that. So our proposal then goes to the ethics board here, but obviously if you're part of an organisation that has your own committee, then it would go to yours, and then it's a process of them coming back to you with questions and points that they want to raise, and then they grant approval for the research. So if you're not in an academic institution, that's something we would help you with. I don't know if Craig and Parvati want to add any more to that. If I've misrepresented something, then please let me know. And if that answers your question, Shirley. Actually, I'm not sure Shirley's still on the call.
No, that was fine. Thanks.
Thank you. So does anybody else have any further questions or points you'd like to raise with us?
No, Joe, can I just add to that? So yeah, if you don't have your own institutions to go through, we'll support you. We've got templates, as Joe said. We'll be on hand to help you through that process. I think key when you're developing the proposal is to think about the arts methods and some of the implications from an ethics perspective. As Joe alluded, unfortunately the guidance from the funders in this area is not too clear. So when you're talking about audio and visual data that you're collecting, think about some of those issues and risks that might, that you might have to think about in relation to the participants. For example, in Uganda, when we were using the photo voice, just some of the complexities of working in a highly securitized context, and suddenly handing people cameras to start walking around and taking photos. It was quite a steep learning curve. So just have a think. And we can talk, as Joe said, we've now come up with protocols and we can help you with these applications. But I would say when it comes to the methods, we are having to be more rigorous and creative in how we think and manage ethics and the risks attached to that through the research that we're doing. Sorry, Joe.
No, that's great. Thank you. It's really helpful. Does anyone else have any additional questions? If you can't think of any now, please feel free to email us at deepa@open.ac.uk or send us a tweet. We do actually check it. Well, I do anyway. I'm not sure Parvati does. Okay, so thanks for joining us, and we'll post this and the other recording on our website or our YouTube channel. And we'll announce the final workshop shortly.
Thank you so much, Joe, and thanks to everyone for attending today. And I really encourage you all to apply, because it's a great, I think you'll enjoy the project. We've got a really nice team, and we have Monday morning meetings at 10 o'clock UK time, where we all get together and we discuss. So we hope we produce and provide a supportive environment with which to further each other's agendas. So we look forward to having you join our group. Thanks. Bye. Bye. And thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I'll just in the waiting room. I'll